So if we are talking about story, I had to say SA2 has one of the best story in Sonic history. So right off the bat, SA2 gives you the feeling of a grander scope by being the first game in the series that allows you to play as both heroes and villains. Anyways, so if you are playing according to my suggestion, हमारी story start होती है with Dr. Eggman, who bursts into a military facility after discovering his grandfather's diary about a secret weapon being held at the base. Right off the bat, SA2 immediately presents the player with mysteries and a lot of questions, thereby giving you a reason to engage yourself with the plot. And for a game with rating of E for everyone, it can actually have pretty high stakes. While the plot has some movements, the major reason you will be interested in the story is because of the characters, which is exactly what makes the story work so well. And so this is it for the story. Now let's jump to the main stuff you will play a Sonic game for. The gameplay. And let me tell you one thing, Adventure 2 is one of the most, if not the most replayable 3D Sonic game out there, and right off the bat, the game does show a lot of promise, be it the variety in the gameplay or a higher skill ceiling. So the game has 3 returning styles from SA1, which in that game were the most beloved, namely Speed stages featuring Sonic and Shadow, Mech stages featuring Eggman and Tails, and lastly Knuckles and Rouge with their treasure hunting. So सबसे पहले हम बात करते हैं about the most obvious and the major reason why people will play this game for, the Speed stages. And let me tell you, these are some of the best Sonic levels in the history. This is made evident right from the very moment you start the hero story with City Escape. This level not only is the most iconic 3D Sonic level, but also a high-octane action-packed ride that beautifully conveys all of the major mechanics to the player. Sonic is a hell lot faster this time, and while the stages are a lot linear in nature compared to SA1, but that linear design also brings a lot of refinement with it. Although don't worry, because you still have multiple pathways you can take on, and not to mention Sonic still retains his moveset, so messing around with physics is also a good idea. Anyways, so as soon as you start the level, you are skating down the streets of San Francisco at a speed of sound while destroying every public and private property that comes in your way, and if you are skillful enough, even performing sick tricks. Then finally, after destroying the train, you are finally handed the controls of Sonic himself. Like I said earlier, Sonic's game is a lot faster, and in order to accommodate for it, you have much more sharper turning and sensitive controls. Now I see a lot of people make a big deal out of it, but honestly in my opinion, it was necessary. Because the game does require a lot of sharp turning. After that you are given some stairs to walk up, but if you think around a little and jump on the railing, you are treated with my favorite mechanic in any Sonic game ever, the grind rails. God, I hate how Boost games butchered it to such a laughable degree. You see, अगर तुम enough momentum generate करते हो, तो you can actually hop onto rails and use them as a traversal technique. However, it also has a solid risk versus reward element to it. You can simply hop onto rail and expect it to carry you away, but in the end, it's a lot slower and won't get you as fast as you expected. But if you hold the B or the crouch button, basically the same button as the spin dash, you can go a hell lot faster. But there is a risk of losing all of your momentum if you did not balance yourself while making sharp turns. However, if you did succeed at it, the game rewards you with the bonus point, which I will bring up later in the video. Now after getting past the area I was referring to, you are treated with your first enemy, and when you homing attack him, another change from SA1 is made clear immediately. For the starters, in 3D Sonic के बारे में ज़्यादा idea नहीं है, तो homing attack is an ability that allows Sonic to automatically lock on and destroy the enemy when jump is pressed twice. Because unlike Mario, Sonic is a fast character who won't be as precise while running around at top speeds. And unlike that game where you can just mash your way around, this game में you have to get your timing and jump right, which is such a welcome change because it adds a layer of depth. Because many a times you will be chaining your homing attack in order to clear the pit just below you. Not to mention the larger the chain is, the more will be the bonus you get, which can help you in getting a better rank at the end of every stage. Also, just like Adventure 1, character upgrades भी इस गेम में डाली गई हैं, and unlike that game जहाँ पर तुम्हें hub world explore करके ये items find करने पड़ते थे, इस गेम में they are directly available to you in the level. And as for Sonic and Shadow, उन्हें मिलता है light speed dash, जो thank God can be used with the press of a single button rather than waiting for it to charge. However, you also get a light attack, जिसके लिए तुम्हें बटन को होल्ड करके रखना पड़ता है, by which you can defeat multiple enemies at light speed. Then also have flame ring that allows you to break the metal containers, magic gloves that allows you to shrink the enemies into smaller balls and throw them at other enemies, and finally my favorite, the bounce bracelet. This power up allows you to keep bouncing like a ball and is thus helpful for accessing slightly more vertical pathways. However, Shadow को इनमें से सिर्फ 3 upgrades मिलती हैं. Rest of it are reserved for Sonic, and there is an extra ability common to each character named Mystic Melody. As you can probably tell by all of this, SA2 compared to its predecessor opts for a different direction. And honestly, I think it's for its own good, because while the level design is not as good as SA1, SA2 as an overall package is far more refined, and even the game as a whole is not that linear. Come on, we are talking about Sonic's moveset. थोड़ी सी तो openness रहेगी. I mean, you have spin dash and totally momentum based platforming. And since we are talking in reference to it, another major departure from SA1 is that spin dash is no longer spammable. Instead, you have to hold it down. Now मैंने बहुत लोगों को देखा है to make a big deal out of it, but come on man, Sonic natively इतना fast है कि spammable spin dash would make him go uncontrollably fast. Look, I absolutely love spam dash in SA1, but I simply don't find much use of it here. अब ये तो बात होगी speed stages की, which finally opens the gate to polarizing aspects of the game. And while talking about it, let's first discuss about the treasure hunt levels. So unlike Sonic and Shadow, Knuckles and Rouge has treasure hunt gameplay, where the whole goal is to explore the level in order to find 3 items as quickly as possible. And if you ask me, they are a major improvement. देखो SA1 के साथ प्रॉब्लम क्या थी कि so much of the development time was spent on Sonic's gameplay कि बाकी कैरेक्टर्स को जितनी रिफाइनमेंट मिलनी चाहिए थी वो नहीं मिल पाई. Whether it be the lack of unique stages or just some serious exploits player can break the game balance with. I mean, sure these gameplay styles were fun in their own right, but something that could be easily improved upon. And I am glad Adventure 2 exactly does that. सबसे पहले, you have the basic moveset and amazing controls from SA1, but this time, overall flow is a hell lot better. For starters, the moveset works like this. You have an extremely fast character who can glide, climb, throw a powerful punch, and can dig under the ground once you get the power up, which makes the level so much fun to traverse through. But where Adventure 2 truly beats the first game is, like I mentioned, the flow. जहाँ पर तुम्हें dig करने के लिए कई जगह SA1 में रुकना पड़ता था while pressing the jump and action button together. In SA2, it's as simple as to just jump and then pressing the action button. Heck, it even allows you to perform the drill dive, एक ऐसा move that allows you to go all the way down from a very vertical platform, and it's just so satisfying to pull off. There is also an uppercut move for gaining slight vertical height, but for the most part, it isn't as useful as the other ones. Also, in order to help you in your quest, there is a radar system that blinks faster the more you are near a treasure and has 3 stages. Green stage depicts that you are just near an emerald piece, yellow stage depicts that it's even closer, and finally there is a red stage that depicts you are just nearby it. Heck, even better, if you are playing the battle port of this game, there is also an exclamation mark that tells you if you are just on top of it. As for their upgrades, Rouge and Knuckle get shovel claws / pink nails that allows you to dig under a variety of smooth surfaces, iron gloves / boots that allows you to break iron crates, sunglasses / treasure scope allowing you to see invisible objects, and just as Sonic and Shadow, Mystic Melody. Now मैं जानता हूँ कि कई लोग कह रहे होंगे कि oh they suck, they take a lot of time and Emerald Radar is garbage. Now here's the thing, yes, the Emerald is downgraded compared to SA1 to a point where it has only 3 stages of alert and tracks a single piece at a time. However, it barely does any damage to the game because that's where the hint system comes in. You see, there are a lot of hint monitors जो throughout the level scattered होते हैं, giving you a hint regarding the location of the emerald. And this right here is what gives your exploration a sense of motive and direction. SA2 का gameplay loop is not about just randomly running around till the radar blinks. Instead, it's more about taking advantage of your moveset and finding the location where your piece can be hidden in. And before someone mentions that they lower your rank, let me make it clear that it is nothing more than a half truth. Because all they do is slightly lower your score. However, if you are fast enough, you can still get away with an A rank while using decent chunk of hints. Not to mention that the level design itself is filled with very small details that you need to take in account if you want to find the emerald pieces. Also about the complaint of these levels being very long. You see, Adventure 2 is a game that except for some levels is not that difficult but has a higher skill ceiling, which means भले ही गेम खुद हार्ड नहीं है but गेम को मास्टर करना is quite tough. So one of the major reasons as to why they take so long is the fault of the player himself. Whereas a decently skilled player like myself could easily complete them in under 3 to 4 minutes, which can be simply achieved by replaying the levels. And if you are ready with the counter argument that I don't have to replay something to enjoy it, I agree with you. However, that simply doesn't give you the license to go on the internet and shit talk about this game as if the higher skill ceiling of this game has no worth at all. Not to mention that not having fun part is also based on you being bad at a game on your first playthrough and a preconceived bias of just let me get to the only good parts. That is not the game's fault. It's something that you don't like. Isn't it the same shit that Dark Souls is known for, like punishing the player over and over again till he gets good? It's like going into a DMC game for the first time and expecting to score an S on every mission, all while having a good time, even though all you are doing is mashing the same button. Your refusal to engage yourself with the game's mechanic that directly impacts your enjoyment, it ties in directly with your skills, is not the game's fault. And besides, even if you suck at these levels and take long to complete them, they still are full of unique locations, have beautiful atmosphere, banger of a music, are richly detailed, and तुम्हें ऐसे characters भी provide करे गए हैं that have buttery smooth controls and faster movement. Combine that with the great level design, for the most part, you are guaranteed to have fun exploring these levels with the exception of 2 or 3. Another thing that some people like to bitch about is the RNG and that emerald pieces change locations on every playthrough, which again is true. However, it's only one side of the story. Because yes, while there is an RNG and it somewhat negatively impacts the game, its negative impact overall is bare minimum. क्योंकि emeralds हमेशा specific locations पर ही spawn होंगे, which by the way nearly all of them demand high awareness from the player. बस फर्क इतना है कि spawn random हो जाता है among these locations. Take for example aquatic mine and its locations. अगर तुम्हारे पास थोड़ा सा भी IQ है तो you know that game might be referring to the rail tracks in the mine down below. And guess what? There is a single room in that mine shaft where a gun robot is placed, and in addition to that, he makes specific noises when you get close. या फिर this hint regarding a triangulated skull formation, which by the way there is a single formation like this in the entire level. Now you might say that it's too much precision to ask for, but that is exactly why the radar is offered to the player so that he or she might be able to pinpoint the exact location of the missing piece. And let's say all of the complaints that some people have are fixed. You have the problem with the knockdown radar. Well, now you have the radar from SA1, but then the game would have a harder time tracking each emerald piece. Plus, it still wouldn't change the fact that you have to actively look for those emerald locations. Now the RNG is fixed. But then, what about the replayability these levels had to offer? You thought the environments were way too big? Well, now they are not. However, your command on the controls and moveset is no longer put to test. And for some of you who think they are very unsonic-y, I would love to see you unlock all the Chaos Emeralds in classic games, just to get the idea that exploration has indeed been a part of Sonic game since the very beginning. So why is it so outrageous to turn it into its own playstyle? And before wrapping it up, I would highly suggest any newcomer that when you get to the level named Aquatic Mine, please इस brick room में जाकर air necklace को ढूंढो. Trust me, you will thank me later. With that out of the way, let's now jump to the most hated part of the game, the mech stages. Just like treasure hunt levels, these stages have also received a brutal lashing in recent years. Major complaint being they have button mashy combat and are way too slow. Needless to say, I somewhat disagree. So in stages ka main premise is about engaging in platforming, all while locking on and shooting as many targets as possible. Now at surface level it might sound boring, but as far as I am concerned, it's not. You see, what makes them so fun to play as and an immediate improvement over SA1's Gamma gameplay is that not only are these stages specifically designed with them in mind, but also the enemy variety is far better than SA1. SA1 में for the most part enemies behaved the same way with no unique attacks of their own. However, in SA2, it is handled a lot better. Your first stage starts with basic robots who just shoot you. Next comes the Hornet, which can fire multiple projectiles at once, thus creating an element of choice. Either player can risk getting hit in exchange of a higher combo, or you could just hit the middle portion and get done with it instantly, but you won't get rewarded as much. And talking about combos, you see, the more enemies you lock on and most importantly shoot them, you are rewarded with bonus points. But locking on isn't as simple as you might think. कुछ टाइम तक होल्ड करने के बाद तुम्हारा लॉक ऑन रीसेट हो जाएगा, thereby giving you a slight depth जहां पर तुम्हें ना सिर्फ डिसाइड करना पड़ता है कि when to and where to release your shots, but also to do it under specific time, so that you get the higher combo. Best one being the perfect combo, which you can only get if you destroyed 11 targets at a time, which especially becomes clearer in these on-rail sections. And since we were talking about the enemy types, let me wrap up the discussion with some more types. One being Golden Gun Beetle, which only appears for a short time in level, and their major purpose is to give you bonus of 1000 for destroying them. Others are Monohawks, which are far more aggressive robots constantly shooting at you while giving you no time to breathe. Then there are these Rhino enemies, who while cannot fly, but as the name suggests, charges at you once they see you. And finally, there are the Artificial Chaos, which are hands down the worst ones to fight, especially as mecha characters. As for platforming of mechs, while I do admit that the controls are not as good as Gamma's, but that doesn't mean they are bad. It's still easy to build up momentum with them while running in straight line, and not to mention that once you get the jet booster, basically the power up that allows you to hover, it becomes even more enjoyable, because unlike previous adventure game, it isn't just about helping you flying over certain obstacles, but is also about helping you retain your momentum and is also much more quicker to activate, due to which, if you hover at just the right time, you can skip over certain sections of the level. As for their other power-ups, that includes some weapon upgrades like Laser Blaster that increases your area of damage, thus damaging even more enemies, Bazooka which helps you to break steel containers, and just like other characters, you get Mystic Melody. But some might say, mechs are pretty slow, they take way too much time, which trust me, isn't fully true, and I have my own experience to back that up. These levels are just as long as Sonic stages, and there are only 2 levels which extends the time of 4 minutes. Of course, if you are skilled enough. While I do think they are the biggest part of the game, I still disagree to them being bad or tedious. And just like I said for Treasure Hunt, please do not judge them by the 1/3 good mentality that your favorite creator or a random guy on the internet has implanted in your brain. And yes, that pretty much wraps up all the 3 gameplay styles. As you can see, Adventure 2 has some solid gameplay variety, but there is just one more thing that raises it from being good to status of a great game, and that is game का ranking system. Unlike some future games in the series where the ranking system is a total joke, इस गेम में अगर तुम highest rank that is A achieve करना चाहते हो, you need to be highly skillful, and हर एक gameplay style के अपने criteria हैं of achieving those A ranks. With speed characters, you need to not only be fast but also be cool and stylish by pulling off all the sick maneuvers, collecting rings, and destroying as many enemies as possible. With treasure hunting, it's about finding the emeralds as fast as possible. And with mech characters, it's about a balance between building combos and being fast enough. With the exception of levels like Eternal Engine and Cosmic Fall, जहाँ पर only the latter rule is applicable. Even though mech and speed level themselves are linear, but mastering them and going through them even more smoothly is so goddamn fun. And treasure hunt levels में mastery के बाद traversal अलग level पे fun बन जाती है. Heck, I would even go as far as to say that Adventure 2 is the most replayable 3D platformer out there, and no other game of the genre could even touch the heights that Adventure 2 reaches in terms of replayability and extra content. Apart from level themselves, there are also 4 extra missions for each level. First being to collect 100 rings as fast as possible, second being finding the lost Chow as fast as possible, third being to complete the level in a time limit, where the criteria for an A rank remains the same as the main mission, thus further solidifying my statement that other gameplay styles are not slow. And lastly being the hard mode, जहाँ पर treasure hunt levels में emeralds सिर्फ एक set locations में ही spawn होंगे, but will be tougher to get. And for speed and mech characters, it's exactly what it sounds like. And of course मैं कैसे भूल सकता हूँ Chow Garden को. देखो Chow Garden एक बहुत ही complex चीज है, इसलिए मैं उसकी डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा, but इतना समझ लो कि it's like a pet simulator. You know the type of game where you need to take care of and raise something. Also, अगर तुम completionist हो, तो get ready to not only A rank every single main or extra mission in the game, but also to spend hours of your life in Chow Garden. And if you manage to 100% this game, you are rewarded with a bonus stage, and that being Green Hill Zone, the first ever stage in first ever Sonic game. Now, it might come off as not so interesting considering how many times the stage has been rehashed, but तुम्हें सोचना पड़ेगा. SA2 was a 10th anniversary game, and this was the first time Green Hill was ever done in 3D as a thank you to every Sonic fan and to every Dreamcast owner. Because this game was also one of the final first-party releases for Dreamcast months after its discontinuation. But enough of the praises now. Let's discuss some of what I think are the actual flaws in the game. Although before doing that, I would like to address the hate surrounding this game in recent years. You see, जब दोनों ही adventure games release हुई थी, they were praised universally and stood tall among some of the greatest Sonic games ever made. Sure, उस टाइम पर भी गेम की कुछ criticisms थी, but they were bare minimum. However, जब ये गेम्स 2010 या 11 के अराउंड री-रिलीज करी गई थी, people out of nowhere started bashing these games. Especially Adventure 2 को रिगार्ड करा गया था as only 1/3 good, and anyone who liked the game was labeled as delusional or nostalgia blinded. Now you might ask, why is that the case? So basically the period between 2004 and 8, Sonic wasn't doing all that great. In fact, 2006 में Sonic the Hedgehog, aka Sonic 06 रिलीज हुई थी, that single-handedly destroyed Sonic's reputation because of how unfinished it was. And क्योंकि ये period था of internet revolution, more and more people were made aware of how bad this game was, and Sonic को hate करना एक popular trend बन चुका था. Plus, Sonic as a franchise has undergone a lot of changes, जिसकी वजह से fan base में एक divide create हो जाता है, जहाँ पे एक type के लोग एक era पसंद करते हैं, दूसरे type के लोग दूसरा era पसंद करते हैं. And as a result, जब दोनों adventure games को re-release करा गया for modern platforms, that too with shitty remasters, तो as expected, कई सारे journalists and creators ने games को bash करना शुरू कर दिया. Some parts of the game were presented as straight away bad, and the flaws जो कि negatively game में present थे were over exaggerated to such a great extent that it made the whole game sound unplayable. While not all, but many of the negative reviews of this game went from Sonic Adventure 2 review to 100 things to hate about Sonic Adventure 2. Little Jimmy, who once was playing in his mother's lap a day prior, suddenly turned into a professional game critic the moment he heard Sonic Adventure, for whom the standard of what makes a good video game has risen so miraculously high that it makes Mario 64 look like a fucking joke. The non-Sonic levels were labeled as slow and time-consuming, even when the game itself tells them to do better, and people who loved these stages were labeled as nostalgia blinded. तो मैं उनसे पूछना चाहूँगा that if indeed it is just nostalgia, why is it that I fell in love with it even though I picked it up for the first time 2 to 3 years ago? If it is just nostalgia, why aren't other terrible or mediocre games are held in same high regard like Ride to Hell Retribution, Rambo video game or Spider-Man 3? Because I am pretty sure that many people might be nostalgic for even them. If the adventure games were so bad, why is it that they even received critical acclaim to begin with? And why is it that they suddenly became bad once major reviewers started to review them? All of this leads to a pool of misinformation which takes advantage of those who haven't played the game yet or never touched it in a long time, thus end up doing the same, while others play it with the mentality of Oh please, let me just get to the good part. However, it seems that these games are somewhat regaining their status in recent times, and I am happy about it. Anyways, let's forget all the bitching and talk about the game's flaws without any over-exaggeration. Now while the speed gameplay in this game is almost perfect, it still suffers from two button syndrome, जहाँ पर तुम्हारे कई सारे मूव्स एंड एक्शंस को एक ही बटन से मैप कर दिया गया है, जिसकी वजह से तुम कई बार अपने डिजायर्ड एक्शन की जगह कोई और मूव परफॉर्म कर बैठोगे. Like sometimes if you intended to do a light speed dash, you might end up doing somersault, or you might want to interact with something using action button but would rather end up performing a somersault. Even though the controls work almost 80% of the time, but those 20% of the time when they don't work can be really frustrating and in some cases even fatal. And while the rail grinding in this game is so good, but one thing that totally sucks about it is rail switching, which at times sends you flying off the stage. Also, its game camera can also act awful at times, where sometimes it could refuse to turn around or become abysmal in tight corridors, which especially becomes relevant in some treasure hunt levels. And lastly come mech levels, who can sometimes have very cheap enemy placements, and not to mention they also have a weird ability to lose all of their momentum while turning or climbing a slope, which is why I think they are the most flawed part of the game. Especially Tails ki mech levels are plagued by it. Also, the sound effects of their beep boops are very annoying. And since we are talking about sound, let's wrap it up with a discussion about game soundtrack and sound design. For soundtrack, it's one of the best you will ever hear in a game. Be it the heavy rock and techno nature of speed stages, the electronic and synthwave music of mech stages, or the raps and jazz of treasure hunting levels. In addition to that, each and every character has his own theme, which perfectly reflects their personality. Be it Sonic's open-hearted and always doing the right thing attitude,
well, I don't show off, don't criticize. I'm just living by my own feelings, and I won't give in, won't compromise, 'cause I only have a steadfast heart of
Knuckles' tough and introverted persona, Tails' journey of believing in himself and gaining confidence, Eggman's egotistical yet genius personality, Rush's cunning and confident nature, या फिर Shadow's techno vibes reflecting upon his artificial nature and tragic backstory.
You see a light wherever you go. You have to face it again and again, and again and again.
And of course, game ki main theme, Live and Learn. case you can't already tell, it kicks ass. However, what does not kicks ass is sound design. Now sound effects में इतनी problem नहीं है, they sound cool. However, where the problem truly arrives is game की audio mixing. Some of the sound effects can be ear-rapingly loud, especially if you are playing the battle port of this game. And that wraps it up for sound design and soundtrack. Sound design might be pretty flawed, but soundtrack is fucking awesome. देखो back then I wasn't neither as confident nor as in good shape as I am now, जिसकी वजह से I really wasn't able to form my own opinion but rather used to scavenge upon opinion of others as a result. And yes, I too made a video bashing this game, all while copying ProJared's review toe to toe. But since that time is gone and after giving this game a second chance, I did a complete 180 and ended up loving this game. Since then, SA2 एक ऐसी game है that I have completed 5 times and have spent over 150 hours in. While I still don't consider it to be the best Sonic game ever made, but on a personal level, it is my favorite, sitting right next to MGS3 and Silent Hill 2 as my third favorite game of all time. So yeah, this was an apology video after all, and with that out of the way, I give Sonic Adventure 2 a solid 8.5 out of 10, easily a mini masterpiece and a must play. Dreamcast might have started with a Sonic boom, but it ended with a Sonic bang.